Celtics Talk podcast is presented by 24autogroup.com. 11 locations across New England.
What's up, everybody? Another off-day edition of the Celtics Talk podcast, coming to you after the debut of the Celtics City documentary on HBO and streaming on Max. What we're going to try to do is, over the course of these 9 episodes, try to react to it in the aftermath. Some of the premieres will happen on game nights, so we'll have to figure out how we'll weave that together. But I'm going to try to jump on, give you some of my bigger takeaways from the episodes, and even better, we got Michael Holley and Jackie MacMullan giving their breakdowns. You'll hear that at the end of this episode. Be way better than what I'm going to ramble about, but I'm going to try to look at it through the lens of the modern era too, like the 23, 24, 24, 25 Celtics, the Jays era, if you want to call it that. I like that they're kind of intersplicing them. And even in last night's episode entitled Founding Fathers, there were still the Jays were in there. Joe Mazzulla had a little bit in there as well. And I think it's interesting how they're trying to tie, that era to this. And so it starts with Joe Mazzulla coming out, and there's a great thing where Joe's in the meeting room with the team before the start of what appears to be the 23-24 season, and says, you have to make bleeping choices. And it's all about like the tenets that will carry this team through the season, and the choice to win and be a champion and all that. And he reflects on going to Red Auerbach camps as a kid. And what I thought one of the more interesting lines he says is that there's a DNA of Celtics basketball, and so you can hear from we're talking about the 50s and 60s and the founding fathers, but what they established and what Bill Russell came and made it all about winning, that still permeates 70-something years later as the Celtics try to hang even more banners. And you even hear Jayson Tatum pops up later in the episode and talks about sacrifice, and talking about the standard when you put the uniform on. It's a neat little way to sort of to show like the common threads that exist, that if Russell doesn't come in and if Satch Sanders doesn't embrace from being a scorer in college to just playing defense and playing hard, if everyone doesn't embrace their role, the Celtics aren't as successful as they've been through the years. And we can sit here and talk about how the game has evolved and the differences in the play style, but as Joe says, there's a certain DNA to everything that these championship teams have done. And I love that you can sort of see that in this year's squad and last year's squad with the way that they have embraced winning and making choice to be successful by taking on some of the sacrifice that comes with it. Maybe the best part of this episode is hearing Bill Russell's voice again. And there's some older clips interspliced with him talking about joining the team and embracing the winning. And there's some stuff at the end about the battles with Wilt Chamberlain, but throughout it, Russell's bellowing laugh is ever present, and it's just such a joy to hear that man's voice again. You can see the impact he had, and that's part of the conversation here. There's a lot about race and everyone coming to grips with the way the black players on the Celtics were treated in that era, and again juxtaposed to Bob Cousy being Mr. Basketball in that era and getting a lot of the credit. Now, it's going to be, I'm going to have to walk a fine line here as someone who was born in Worcester, who grew up steeped on the history of Bob Cousy and from the Holy Cross days to his time with the Celtics. I have a great appreciation for what Cousy means to this team, for how underrated and underappreciated he is, from what was it, JJ Redick's plumbers and firemen comment. I think we know basketball evolved. It's hard to compare eras. Guys would have morphed and changed if they played in a modern game. But it's interesting to see Cousy wrestle with the fact that he was sort of the face of a franchise, even though it wasn't until Russell arrived that they started to win championships and really took a leap. And now credit Red Auerbach. He saw the vision. He knew that, building this roster, first off, he didn't even want Cousy, and then finally embracing him to making sure that they found a way to get Russell because he thought he would be the complementary piece, and then building out the roster from there. One of the other things that really popped to me was just like how close some of those games were. at the start of the Celtics title run, like more overtime games than I necessarily remember. I think because the Celtics won so many championships in that era, we remember just how dominant they were. There's one year, I think, in the early 60s where they sweep through the playoffs. But especially that first year was a grind, and double overtime games, and a lot of big moments that go beyond just Cousy and Russell. I did love the a little bit of seeing Cousy talking about how he never considered himself, the male modelness when he'd be on trips and posing in unbuttoned shirts in all the advertisements that he did. Again, it's as someone who grew up here, who used to climb up on Bob Cousy's stone wall in Worcester trying to just get a glimpse of a Celtics legend. It was neat to see, both how he just how he invented sort of that point guard position and the wizardry that he played with at an era when no one else was doing what he did. But it's Russell that really commands this episode, and a reminder of how vital he was, and all the stuff he was going through off the court that a remarkable man for the way he navigated it all. And Cousy wrestles a little bit with, could he have done more for his teammates in that moment? And there's books out there with the book recently with Cousy talking about that, and maybe it could have done more for Russell in that era, and Russell saying he didn't have to, that he wanted to take it all on. But just a fascinating first episode that again lays the foundation of where all of this is going, and that lays that DNA that would permeate all the years later. And I love that Joe Mazzulla and Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown find their way to muscle into this episode. I suspect we'll see a lot more of them on the way through here. And I'll go back to it. When we were at the premiere the other night, I think we saw episode 5, and it's very heavy on Celtics Lakers, which is somewhat intertwined in there. You hear James Worthy at the start of this, laying the foundation of Bleep the Celtics. I wonder, it's going to be fascinating to hear Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown as they watch more episodes, what they take away from this experience and what they learn about, sort of the journey and where they slot. If you listen to our preview episode yesterday, I asked Jaylen about do they think in the moment about their place in Celtics history? Because now that you've won a title, you're part of it. You've hung a banner. You're eternal in Boston. But there's also levels to this, right? Where we remember Cousy and Russell on a different level, and Bird and McHale on a different level because they won multiple championships because of all the success those teams had. And now as the Celtics navigate this 24-25 season, I always find myself wondering, do they understand in the moment, the opportunity they have? And sometimes when they're kicking away those late game leads, I especially wonder if they understand the magnitude of what's in front of them. But it's encouraging to hear Jaylen say, he'd be lying if he didn't say he's excited about the opportunity here, about a chance to win a second title, to change the narrative of, how this team is remembered. I keep saying it. It's one thing to win one title. A lot of teams do that. It's another to win multiple, to, be in a different category, a different stratosphere among teams. And undeniable that the Russell Cousy era did that, and now the Jays are on their march trying to do the same with the Celtics. All right, games coming up later this week. Keep it locked on the Celtics Talk podcast for recaps after. Portland is coming to town on Wednesday night. No Rob Williams. He went back to Portland. Breaks my heart. Philadelphia on Thursday, and then things get real interesting. We want to talk about Celtics Lakers and that rivalry renewed on Saturday night. Oklahoma City next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll leave you today with my colleagues, Jackie MacMullan, Michael Holley, discussing their thoughts from episode 1. Look forward to taking this Celtics City journey with all of you as we go over the next 9 weeks.
Are you ready to enter the realm of affordable luxury? Drew Carter here with 24 Infinity of Plymouth, where performance comes for less.
Right now, lock in 2.9% APR financing for 60 months on a new Infinity QX80 Luxe.
Ready to trade and upgrade? You'll get top dollar for your trade. Visit 24 Infinity of Plymouth at 151 Samoset Street. and online at 24infinityofplymouth.com.
We're so excited to be talking about Keys to the City for episode 1 of this fantastic docuseries on HBO. Michael Holley here with Jackie MacMullan. Jackie, we could talk about this series really all day, but what are some of your takeaways from the first episode?
Well, I think it gave people who only know of Bill Russell as this sort of ethereal ghost that wasn't part of their everyday life. You could see how principled he was, how distrustful he was of almost everybody. One of the scenes that really resonated with me in episode 1 is the martini. He's having a martini with a writer who ends up writing his book.
Right.
And he drinks the martini, and then Bill says, "Hey, why don't you taste it?" He just wanted to see if a white man would drink a black man's drink. And those are the kind of things that Bill did a lot. He really tested people's mettle, if you will. And I thought it was very well portrayed in this episode.
And it's so Russell, too. That is really Russell trying to figure out who you are, and if you see the humanity in him. That was one of his big things.
Yes.
Do you see the human, or do you just see a basketball player, and how far will you take that? And I think the episode is well titled when it's called Founding Fathers, because it's the Russell part of it and all the things that he went through. I thought his daughter was great talking about his grandfather. Russell's grandfather was the first Russell born free. I mean, that's just like, you think about that.
Blows your mind, right?
So Russell, and then there's Bob Cousy, who is Mr. Basketball by the time Russell comes to the Celtics. So looking at things from his perspective, too.
Well, and Cousy was it. It was his team. He's getting on the cover of Look magazine, and he's going on Caribbean cruises that are being paid for. He's a bona fide superstar. And I think from the very beginning, I'm sure Russell was looking at it and thinking, he's really, really good, but like we're not that far apart. And so I thought that was a little interesting thing too. Their relationship is very, very complicated, as we've come to know through the years. I think they both had great love and respect for one another. But somewhere along the way, I just think Bill felt, why are these scales so tilted in the balance of the white point guard superstar? And you can't really blame him.
And you look at Cousy, because he was getting a lot of the credit. You think about those, we say now, Russell, 11 championships in 13 years, but if you drop us in the middle of 1960 or 1961 and the Celtics are winning championships, it wasn't Bill Russell and the Celtics, it was Bob Cousy and the Celtics. And this kind of talks about how that began to change a little bit.
And as Bob Ryan said in the doc, as only the commissioner can say, if you didn't really follow the NBA, the one player you might have heard of was Bob Cousy, not Bill Russell in the beginning. By the prime of his career, it's Russell versus Wilt. That's the storyline. But in the beginning, it was all about Coos. And we love Coos. He deserved all of it. He was an interesting player. He was no-look passes, stuff that some people wanted to call showboating, except for they're always in everybody's hands. They were good plays. He was a really interesting guy, and he was feeling it. Why shouldn't he?
You talked about the relationship, and it's a little complicated. I know we don't have all the time to get into the dynamics of their relationship, but how, if you had to, crystallize it, what would you say it was?
Well, I would say in the end, what Bob Cousy realized was, wow, when all this racial strife was happening, I should have been a little more supportive. I should have been talking to Bill about this. I should have been marching with Bill. I should have. Well, in the moment, you're thinking, well, that's his private life. I'm not going to get involved. And I think Bob has regrets about that. But it wasn't that he didn't care about Russ or didn't support him, but he wasn't actively engaged with him.
And Russell, from his point of view, said, yeah, I get that, but I didn't necessarily need you to do that. I mean, he was, and I thought it was interesting when he talked about the game in Kentucky, where the Celtics players, first of all, pretending, hey, we're not players. Okay, will you serve us? And, hey, we're players. Okay, we'll serve you. We're not players. No, we won't serve you. And so they decide not to play. But Russell said, hey, Frank Ramsey did what he had to do. He played as a man. I did what I had to do as a man. I didn't play.
But can't you tell me, if you give Bill Russell truth serum, wouldn't he have liked it so much more if all the players from the Celtics got on that plane and went home?
Sure. Yeah, he would like it more. But I think that was the realism of
Yes.
Russell. That's not going to happen. And would it happen now? Maybe. Was it going to happen in 1960 in Kentucky? No chance. But there's a lot to get to in this episode. I know you guys enjoyed it. We've enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out with us.